Have you ever had the feeling that you are playing a role? As if the person you show to the world is not exactly you? Maybe you look in the mirror, and for a brief moment, you don't recognize yourself. Or perhaps you spend the whole day fulfilling obligations, smiling, responding to messages, saying everything is fine, when in reality, something inside is silently crumbling. If this sounds familiar, then listen closely. You are not going crazy. You are awakening. Franz Kafka did not write to entertain. He wrote to expose the absurdity of modern existence, the silent pain of those who live without knowing why. His characters are not sick or lost. They are you. They are the raw and visceral representation of a human being crushed by a world that demands answers but never offers meaning. Kafka does not give you comfort. He gives you a mirror. A distorted mirror, yes, but only because the reality it reflects is already deformed by nature. He writes about men who wake up transformed into monsters, about bureaucracies that oppress without reason, about unreachable castles. But deep down, what he is saying is something very simple, and at the same time, brutal. You're not who you think you are. And this, if you have the courage, can be the beginning of everything. And the truth is this: your identity, your routine, your plans, your certainties. Perhaps all of this has been built to protect you from the pain of not knowing who you really are. But ignoring that pain will not make it disappear. It will only bury it deeper until the day it explodes, as happened with Kafka and with so many others who realized too soon that the life they were living was not theirs. So I ask you, how many more days do you intend to live as if you were someone else? Kafka once wrote, "Beyond a certain point, there is no return. This is the point that must be reached." And perhaps, just perhaps, that point is now. When Gregor Samsa wakes up and discovers that he has transformed into a monstrous insect, he does not scream, he does not panic, he does not question whether it is real. He only worries about being late for work. Take a moment to think about that. This is the Kafkaesque tragedy. The grotesque transformation of the body is less disturbing than the absurd pressure to keep functioning in a system that does not care who you are, only what you do. Kafka exposes dehumanization with surgical coldness. In The Metamorphosis, The Trial, The Castle, he does not present us with clear villains or comforting solutions. He places us in front of dead-end mazes where the individual is crushed by invisible and impersonal structures, and where suffering does not come from the malice of the world, but from its indifference. Joseph K., the protagonist of The Trial, is accused of a crime that is never explained. He is investigated, judged, condemned, and never discovers what the accusation was. This seems absurd, but think about it. How many times have you felt judged without knowing why? How many times have you carried guilt, shame, or fear without being able to name where it came from? Kafka does not create characters. He reveals what is behind the mask of each of us. He shows the collapse of identity when confronted with a world that demands senseless obedience, soulless adaptation, and performance without authenticity. And the most unsettling part, these characters continue trying to fit in, even as everything crumbles around them. This is where Kafka touches on a deeply psychological and existential point. Human beings prefer the pain of routine to the pain of freedom. We prefer to keep pretending that we know who we are, that we have control, that we are on the right path, than to face the abyss of a question that many avoid their entire lives. What if I am nobody? But here is the twist. It is precisely in this collapse, in this emptiness, in this not knowing, that something new can be born. Because sometimes, to discover who you really are, you first need to watch who you thought you were completely fall apart. In the next section, we will dive into the psychological labyrinth that Kafka predicted with chilling accuracy, and that we now call modern life. Prepare to confront the discomfort of seeing yourself in full. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You wake up, have coffee, check your phone, respond to messages you don't want to answer, go to a job you don't love, talk to people you don't really know, smile out of obligation, come home exhausted, and repeat it all the next day. They call this life. But what if it's just a disguise? A script that was imposed on you before you could even make conscious choices. Kafka saw this before anyone else. He didn't live in the era of likes, burnout, or toxic positivity, but he perfectly described what we experience today. The constant feeling that we are trapped in a system that forces us to function, but never to live. In the castle, the protagonist tries at all costs to access a place that symbolizes power, belonging, and recognition. He tries to be accepted, tries to understand the rules, but the castle remains unreachable, always on the margins, always out of reach. A cruel metaphor for the modern quest for validation, status, and meaning. The Kafkaesque labyrinth is made of absurd rules, ambiguous language, empty promises. But the most perverse thing is that this labyrinth is internalized. Little by little, you start to blame yourself for not being able to get there. The pressure to be productive, happy, desirable, intelligent, spiritually elevated, all of this transforms into an endless cycle of self-judgment. And what's left of you in the midst of it? This is where psychology comes in. Jung would call this an inflated persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted. But when this persona becomes all that you are, when your essence bends to fit into a mold, the symptom is born. Anxiety, apathy, emptiness, insomnia, identity crises. The soul begins to scream inside, while you continue to smile on the outside. Kafka doesn't offer a cure, but he offers clarity. He shows that the labyrinth is not just out there, it's inside you. And only when you recognize this can you begin to chart a way out. But be careful. Leaving the labyrinth means giving up everything you once believed you were. And that hurts. It hurts like a symbolic death. The question is, are you willing to die to what you are not, to perhaps, just perhaps, be reborn to who you have always been? In the next section, we will explore what happens when this internal labyrinth closes off completely and the feeling of alienation takes over. What to do when you no longer recognize yourself, nor the world around you. We will talk about Kafkaesque loneliness, the kind that doesn't come from the absence of others, but from the absence of oneself. You can be surrounded by people, meeting all expectations, living exactly as they said you should, and still feel as if you're floating in a void. It's a strange feeling, hard to explain, as if there were a thin film between you and the world. You see everything, participate in everything, but feel nothing. You are there, but you are not. Kafka understood this feeling with a chilling precision. He lived it. His entire life was marked by a profound disconnection from the world around him. He wrote in the early hours of the morning, alone, in silence. He was an obsessive observer of human existence, but always on the sidelines. For him, living was like being trapped in a body that never belonged, in a time that never made sense, surrounded by voices that did not listen and faces that did not truly see. This alienation is much more than loneliness. It is existential. It slowly corrodes. It starts with a slight discomfort, a feeling of inadequacy. Then it turns into chronic boredom, emotional disconnection, fatigue from your own presence. You start to avoid certain conversations because you know that no one would understand. You stop sharing what you feel because you already anticipate the emptiness of the response. Little by little, you begin to fade away. And the worst part? No one notices, because on the outside, everything is normal. Kafka does not romanticize this pain. He lays it bare. His characters live surrounded by figures that seem human, but are cold, mechanical, devoid of empathy. They are perfect reflections of a society that demands performance but offers no connection. They plead for meaning but receive silence. They seek justice only to find closed doors. They want to be seen but are ignored. This is Kafkaesque loneliness, being in the world without being part of it. And perhaps you are living exactly this right now. Perhaps you are watching this video in an attempt to find some echo, some confirmation that you are not completely alone in this void. And if that is the case, listen to this carefully. The alienation you feel is not a flaw of yours. It is a symptom of clarity. It is a sign that you still feel something that most have long since numbed. But there is a danger here. Because when alienation prolongs, it not only distances you from the world, it begins to pull you away from yourself. You forget what you like, what you believe, what you dreamed of. Your identity starts to dissolve until only a shadow of who you were remains. And it is at this point that many give up. But it is also at this point that some awaken. In the next section, we will talk precisely about this. What to do when the mind starts to scream for help. How to deal with this nameless anguish that consumes you from within. Kafka does not offer easy solutions, but he points to paths. And perhaps, in this labyrinth that seems to have no way out, pain is the only thread that can guide you back to yourself.